Good morning, folks, and welcome back to our morning tropical update and just general weather update here on News 6 Plus, the News 6 YouTube channel. And thank you so much for joining in if you're over on the Just Weather YouTube channel. I'm News 6 meteorologist David Nazario. We have some very interesting information to pass along to you today. Let's just say we've seen some very hefty breaks in continuity. Now, if you remember what happened a couple of weeks ago with prior Patty, prior Raphael, in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, this is why Jonathan Kagas and myself emphasize to you viewers, we don't want to blast information out too far in advance. There's one thing with being prepared, and then there's another thing with just not really quite having the full story just yet. And I think that's where we stand right now with this invest area in the Gulf, or in the Caribbean Sea, I should say. Good morning to Lee McCabe over on News 6, as well as Julia. Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in from Key West. We have a number of folks tuning in from the Just Weather page. Cole Geit, Melissa, good to see you. Vicky, Colleen, Mick and Marley, PM. Mike, thanks for tuning in over at New Orleans. Skittles McDiddles, Dream, talking with Vicky, and everybody else who's going to be joining in today. So waiting for links to pull up and cooperate, but I will go ahead and pull up. I'm going to go ahead and just play it now and see if I can get it to cooperate. I don't actually see the page in front of me, but I'm going to ad-lib it here since it is showing up in the stream. So as you can see, dead center of the Caribbean, we have that large blob of blue, all that moisture just to the south of the Cayman Islands and Jamaica. That is Invest 99L. That is the system that we've been tracking over the last several days now that is trying to get better organized, but I will say is somewhat underperforming at the moment at least. And as a result, our models are really in a huge disagreement with the ensembles. So we're kind of in a bit of a kerfluffle right now, to tell you the truth. And we're going to kind of lean on some third-party websites today as opposed to using the traditional show system that we have internally here at News 6 just to try to communicate this story to you all to the best of our ability. It doesn't mean that we can drop our guard, but it also is why we've been emphasizing the last few days that there is no reason to buy into the hype. There's no reason to panic just yet, and there's still a lot of time to try to get ahead of this. So with that being said, I want to take us over to the True Color Visible Satellite shot over on the Tropical Tidbits page on the internet. And the reason I pull this up is you can see that we are starting to consolidate an area of spin. We don't have a ton of thunderstorm activity with it just yet, but if you look at the actual satellite here, you can kind of differentiate between where your thunderstorms are and where the presence of an actual closed center of low pressure is evident by the naked eye. That's why I like the True Color Visible Satellite a lot more than just your infrared or your water vapor, because it's literally what the satellite can see just as we see with our own eyes. And it's trying its best. We have a couple things going on out there right now that is trying to impede development. And I think because of the fact the system itself is not performing to where the models initially believed the last couple of days, I think that's why we're seeing such bearish results today. And I'll go ahead and immediately take us over to that right now. So this is if we met yesterday. If you had the chance to tune into our live stream yesterday, this is the information that we had. So this was yesterday's afternoon's model run. If you look at the timestamp in the left-hand corner here, it says initialized, 12 Zulu, November 12th. Now you're probably wondering, today is the 13th. I just want to show you why sometimes here at the News 6 office and other big named weather offices, we take our time with airing out this type of information to everybody to not cause any panic, not cause any fear, or to hype it up for all intents and purposes. So I'll quickly go through the loop, and as you can see, this is the American model, goes quickly into major hurricane status. This is by this Sunday, we're already looking at a Category 4 hurricane down there in the Caribbean. Now, this is still on the table. Like I said, the actual operational models that we're seeing here in comparison to their associated ensembles, and if you're not familiar with ensembles, when we get over to those panels, I'll break it down to you exactly what I mean when I say ensembles versus operational. Right out of the gate, the operational model that you see pictured here, what these computer models do is they'll take initial data and they'll do what's called assimilate it. They'll take it in, they'll absorb it, and they'll think on it before they start to produce their solution. And what we're looking at here in these charts are the solution for that model. And sometimes with these operational models, when you get just that initial sliver of information, they can do some pretty outlandish things. And so as a result, that's also why we balance and bounce back and forth between operational models, ensembles, and why we also use an abundance of different computer models to try to come to a general consensus. And this is also why Jonathan and I like to sort of combat some of the folks out there that you may be seeing promoting one specific model run or one specific image just to make it seem as if they know what they're talking about and what their solution will likely be. So we'll go a little further into the run, and you can see that this thing becomes a monster of a hurricane down there as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula and the Yucatan Channel. This is when we saw each other yesterday. Now, I'll go back to the very beginning. I don't know why it's doing that. I'll go back to the very beginning, and we'll take a look at what today's model run has for us. So now this is valid as of now. 12 Zulu this morning. This was a couple of hours prior to what it is local time if you are tuning in from Central Florida. What happens is when these models receive their data, they have to take it in, think on it a little bit, and then they start to produce their charts that we then look over and what it is that I'm showing you all right now. So if I take you through time, there's our system. It does develop just as we saw yesterday. Starts to intensify off the Central America coast, but then watch this. Gone. So this is kind of the issue that we run into when we try to do mid to long range forecasting. Sometimes you hit it right on the money. Other times there is just way too much deviation to really paint an image representative of what's really likely to happen. So as of right now, and that's why I've been avoiding the chat. I'm already seeing folks in here saying, we knew it, nothing's going to happen. That's not what we're saying here. And I want to make sure to preclude everything that I'm saying right now. What I'm going to talk you through is I'm not going one way or another here. You're going to see other people out there doing just that. They're going to go one way or they're going to go another. We can't be reactive. I notice we've been discussing the last few days the potential fail modes for this system. Is it likely that we get a hurricane? Yes. Is it just as likely that same hurricane crashes into Central America and does nothing for us? Absolutely. When we have systems developing in close proximity to major land masses like the United States, Central America, Mexico, it is very easy for something on that teetering rope, that tightrope that it has to walk, to cause an imbalance, and then you're toppling over next thing you know. So one model run doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen. Let's get that out there right away. We still need to keep a close eye on this because we'll rock right into our ensembles, and I'll show you exactly why it is we still need to keep a close eye on this, and then we'll go ahead and fast forward to a quick break. So now, for those of you who may not be familiar with ensembles, first and foremost, we don't have recon data in this system. We don't have a closed feature just yet. So naturally, the operational models, when they ingest that initial piece of data, they're going to be a little wonky because they're trying to model a storm system that isn't even on the board yet. And because of this, they have to more or less use their digitalized imagination, plug a storm in between everything that's already there, and then model it to the best of their ability. Okay, if we put the storm here at this intensity at this time, how will it behave when it interacts with this high pressure, this trough, this low pressure, this cold front? Ensembles, on the other hand, they take that initial information and then we can adjust it as it goes through time. It's like a focus group. We have 31 members of the GFS Ensemble Focus Group. The manager of this focus group gives them the information and then asks the group, what do you do with this information? What would your answer to my info or my question be? And as a result, you take a look at the ensembles and you can see we are still seeing a huge amount of agreement that something could form down in the Caribbean. And this is with that human element and that adjustment being made. So is it weird to see such discontinuity between the main model and its ensembles? Yeah, heck yeah. When we don't actually have a physical system just yet, the regular models, even if they are very continuous and very consistent, not changing very much, there is still that margin of error. So that's again why it is we have so many different tools in our tool belt in terms of trying to build that weather story and pinpoint the forecast for you all before we relay it to you. We can't be reactive, and we're not throwing this completely off the table. Otherwise, I'm sure National Hurricane Center would do the same thing. So coming up after the break, what we're going to do is continue to look at some of the different tools and model platforms that we have to our disposal, and I'll walk you through exactly why it is that sometimes we do see these very sporadic and dramatic shifts either to the right or to the left, and then we'll also break down why it is that we still need to be monitoring this as we go over the next several days just to be on the safe side. Because regardless, Central America will receive a lot of rainfall and catastrophic flooding from this event if it gets hung up down there. We're also going to get a fresh batch of model data from our hurricane models to see if they also echo the same sentiments or if we still have large disparity or a large margin of error between the two. So definitely stick with us. We'll be back after a quick 2-minute break, and we'll talk to you again very soon. We'll be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. 2 minutes are up, and as always, they went by very, very, very quickly. But I wanted to bring this up very quickly just before we get any further into the live stream. Now, if you're new to the News 6 Plus app, or you're watching from clickorlando.com and you haven't tuned in with us earlier in the week because maybe you just found out about this potential system, I had a school visit yesterday at one of the local elementary schools, and a lot of the students were asking, hey, is there a hurricane next week? I wanted to pull this up in case you have no situational awareness on it just yet. These are all the principles that still apply. All the models do agree still that a tropical cyclone is likely to form. We will probably see Tropical Storm Sarah at the minimum by tomorrow, if not into the early periphery of the weekend. The general thinking is it could get grabbed by this first front that's going to give us really good weather here in Central Florida this weekend and get a bump away from Central America. But then from there, the steering currents involved, the winds, the pressure differences, the height differences in the atmosphere begin to switch up. And then I want to emphasize that last block. Notice that I put in all capital letters the potential fail modes are still in play. And I think what we're seeing today is the simple matter of the operational models showing us, hey, based on the information that we have right now at this current time, these fail modes are a little bit more plausible. We've been talking about this for the last couple of days now. It could crash and burn into Central America and do absolutely nothing for our weather here in the southeast United States, or as some of the earlier iterations of the European model suggested, it gets too strong too quick, and as a result crashes into Cuba and stays south of the Florida viewing area. So we've been trying to cover our bases, and I know that may seem a little difficult to decipher from where you may be sitting and watching from. It's like, okay, so on one end of the spectrum, you're saying we could potentially be wiped out by a major hurricane, but then on the other end, you're saying nothing can happen at all. And that's kind of what happens in these sensitive types of scenarios, where you have a low-pressure system that's, first of all, walking into an area that is unseasonably favorable for the middle portions of November. We got to wrap our minds around that. And then on top of it, where a lot of the guidance suggests it would begin to start to organize and clump together into a bona fide tropical system, it's going to be right off the coast of Central America. So for those of you who may be familiar with my Weather Center Nazario page, any little nudge to the west and it's game over. We are in a very fragile setup as we stand right now, not only because climatologically speaking, in the month of November, we barely ever get strong systems because of how unfavorable the overall picture is in terms of the weather pattern. So we're already dealing with an abnormal setup down there, and we're dealing with an abnormal or very unrealistic path for genesis. And when I say genesis, it means just the initial phase of it coming together and becoming something more than just showers and storms. So now, with that being said, let's get back on over to our ensembles, because we're starting to get a little bit more of that data in. This is, as I remember before as I had stated before the break, this is the focus group here. We have all the information going into that ensemble group in the conference room, metaphorically speaking. And now this is what all the individual members are spitting out to us. So as you can see, a pretty big night and day difference between what I showed you on the operational model versus the ensembles here. A lot of the ensembles still show a fairly aggressive system moving just barely to the east of the Yucatan, if not scraping it, or coming right up through the Yucatan Channel between the peninsula and Cuba. And we have one major hurricane solution actually hitting the west coast of Cuba. So the margin of error is still very wide here. We don't want to go in one direction or the other with this. We don't want to go sounding the alarm and saying prepare for a major hurricane impact, but we also don't want to go communicating the message that there's nothing going to happen at all. And truthfully, that's kind of the nature of the beast with meteorology. You have to really dial in your forecast, make sure the science is sound before you then communicate that to your audience. We've mentioned it a number of times before, both Jonathan and myself and the rest of our wonderful staff here on the meteorological team at News 6, that there are layers that you have to peel back when building your forecast for your viewers. And that's why Jonathan and I are so against being reactive and hyping up a single model run. And I know it may sound as if I'm still parking this system and nothing's going to happen at all, but at the same time, being realistic with myself and with the rest of you all out there, when we see these giant breaks in continuity, it's not a matter of being reactive and immediately shifting to the other end of the spectrum and saying nothing's going to happen, but at the same time, it breaks our confidence a little bit. So I'm not saying that nothing's going to happen, but we've built up that rhythm. Okay, things are coming together. We can confidently say this has been the routine each model run. And then to see such a dramatic shift in a number of our operational pieces, it deters us a little bit. We saw the margin going like this, and now we're kind of going like this again. And that's just the unfortunate nature of the beast with these tropical systems. I wanted to pull up some of the hurricane data, but unfortunately, it looks like they're still taking their sweet time to generate. You can see here, again, when we had that key takeaway message pulled up, this guy right here, that first block, all models agree with a tropical cyclone likely to form. If I switch us back over to the HAFS B model for the Invest, you can see right here as of Thursday afternoon, the timestamp here, 18 Zulu on Thursday, would suggest that one of our first hurricane models is recommending or pointing at the development of Tropical Storm Sarah. So that still is on the table. A lot of it is going to matter as terms of where it actually forms up and how strong it gets and how quickly it gets. That's going to be the big kicker here. If I switch us over to our halves A model, the counterpart to the B, there it is. So you can see that the models are still definitely developing it. So we're not out of the woods. There will still be development. It can just go in so many different directions that we just don't know what path it's going to take just yet. But development is still 90 to 100% locked in. And as I mentioned in previous live streams, anytime you have a tropical cyclone in the Caribbean or in the Gulf of Mexico, it's game on. We need to be paying very close attention to it because someone is going to receive it. Even if it develops and stays far away from Florida, somebody else is going to be dealing with a natural disaster, especially down there in Central America. Let's put that into perspective, and we should count our blessings as well if the forecast doesn't fully come to fruition with another Florida landfall. First of all, nobody wants that. For starters, we're all cooked in terms of this hurricane season. But on top of that, we won't do battle with it. Central America, if it gets stuck down there, they're going to deal with 20-plus inches of rainfall. They haven't had it easy this hurricane season either. So we have to put it into perspective. Regardless of what happens, we all still need to be paying attention to this, some more than others. Naturally, here at the Pinpoint Weather Team, we're going to be dialing in the forecast regardless of where you may reside. Just thankfully here for our Central Floridians, we can maybe, that's the key word there, going ASMR on you, maybe can take a sigh of relief, but you should continue to check back with us on a recurring basis to be safe. So now with that being said, before we run out of time, we got about 3 minutes to do a quick Q&A. I don't want to do too many questions and answers because as you can see, with this large break in discontinuity, I don't really have a ton of answers for you right now. And it's not because we don't know. It's just a matter of the models are kind of playing tricks on us right now, so we don't want to put all of our eggs into one basket and then have to pick them back out and put them somewhere else again. We're going to try to stay as ambiguous and neutral with this as possible. So we have no questions over on News 6. Let's go ahead and take a look at Just Weather. Melissa Riley on Just Weather. Hey, Dave, this means it's going to be bad here in Florida. No, that's exactly what I had said. We don't want to go one way or another right now with where we stand. We don't know if it's going to be bad, but we still want to keep an eye on it because if I go back to our key takeaways right here, we'll go full screen on it real quick. That first block, all models agree a tropical cyclone is likely to form. And for the month of November, historically speaking, typically Florida will receive it. So everybody needs to continue to stay in monitor mode and just kind of evaluate where you are in your preparation. Not saying get prepared, but evaluate where you are. Since we've already had a number of systems here in Florida, I would hope you still have some things left over and maybe start creating a checklist to where if you need to go out, you know exactly what you need to get. Mick and Marley, how does the Invest classification work? So excellent question, as a matter of fact. I'm happy to explain that. So an Invest, as the name implies, doesn't mean we actually have a storm just yet. An area of investigation is the next level up after area of interest. So whenever you go to National Hurricane Center and you see the yellow blip or the orange blip, as I like to call it, the blobs of the different colors, that just means that NHC is interested in that spot because we might see development. An area of investigation means we're starting to get a little bit of thunderstorm activity down there, and it might try to spin up. So now we're investigating the potential this could become a named storm. And then obviously from there you have one of two ways. You either go potential tropical cyclone for the sake of getting watches, warnings, and advisories out, or you go straight to a tropical depression because we're quickly getting organized, and now we're looking at our numbered storm to our named storm. So it will not be meandering near Jamaica, that's for sure. But with that being said, guys, we're running out of time. I don't want to butt up against our 12 o'clock show, so we're going to go ahead and cut the live stream. I do apologize if I missed your question. I'll definitely be back again tomorrow and the rest of the week into the weekend to answer any questions, comments, or concerns that you may have. I know Jonathan is going to be doing a lot of live content and updates as well, since we are still in a very volatile pattern. But please check back with us throughout the rest of the week. Get on to clickorlando.com to check the latest information on a lot of our recurring web articles as well for some more nitty-gritty on the feature. And until next time, you know the drill. This is the Digital Weather Center signing out.